Maloelele, and welcome to the Polynesian Eyes podcast, where we discuss a variety of topics from culture, history, religion, and everything around the globe through Polynesian Eyes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right. Hello, friends. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Polynesian Eyes podcast. Today, we have a pretty exciting show here. It'll be our first sports uh, focused podcast here. And I am here in San Antonio, Texas. And we also have Mr. Aotearoa joining us. Masi, how you
Yes,
doing today?
I'm doing well. It's Easter weekend. Happy Easter, everyone. It's good to join with you too on the Polynesian Eyes podcast.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, happy Easter to everyone. It's an exciting time to be alive.
Mm.
Today, we are going to kind of have a flashback to look at a Polynesian athlete who was on national headlines consistently about 8-10 years ago. And we're really just going to sit down, kind of watch an interview that he did. I know this is going to be an athlete that everyone is familiar with, especially here in the United States. And really, he has a miraculous story to tell. Netflix had a documentary on him, and it's Manti Te'o. So we're gonna go through that. We'll just kind of give everybody a background of how we understood or what we remember of the Manti Te'o experience. For myself, I was about 2 years, year and a half, 2 years out of college. I was working on a startup based out in Dallas, Texas, and really, there was no way that you didn't know about who Manti Te'o was. He was always in the headlines, always a big focal point on ESPN, on national news. At the time, I was busy working on a startup, traveling in and out of the Pacific, working on this startup that we had raised some funds while I was still in college, and then also going to New York, meeting with distributed technologies, the Bitcoin technologies, primarily with the Ethereum founders at the time. So I was aware of Manti, but really didn't dig deep or follow him very closely. So that's kind of the perspective that I had on the background about Manti Te'o. And it really wasn't until the Netflix documentary that I was exposed to an understanding of what was going on and what the nation was following. So that's kind of my perspective. Mussy, I kind of want to share your background on Manti and what you understood and what you followed in this time.
Yes, I have a good amount of experience and engagement with Manti Teo sporadically throughout my life. When I first came from Tonga, went to sixth grade at La'i Elementary. That's when I first came to know Manti. Very athletic, comes from a good family. He was probably the first one I knew when I came. We never played basketball in Tonga too much or anything, but he was the first person I saw as a sixth grade dunking a basketball.
Wow, in
So
sixth grade,
sixth
really?
grade,
On a
yes.
full rim, like a 10-foot rim?
See, I don't know. It's those like at the
Oh,
like
the park,
playground
like the
at park.
outdoor
Yes.
basketball.
So I don't know if it was a 10-foot rim or whatever, but it was still
Still impressive for sixth grade. Dang.
sixth grade. So obviously I knew that he was doing that. And he was like, oh, pretty cool, pretty cool. And then played football with him in ninth grade, freshman year at Kahuku. Very definitely one of the top talent in our team. Played linebacker. He also played some running back because he was so athletic. We did very well that year, made it to the playoffs. I think we lost to Kamehameha, I believe, but he did really well. And I think after ninth grade, he also played in varsity too. at Kahuku, and then I think it was the next year he went to Punahou. Kind of
Mm,
lost contact with him until for a while, until probably I went on my mission to Samoa. I came back. I went to a Samoan ward, and then his family moved to the Samoan ward, and kind of saw him there. And this is the time when he's in the middle of this whole fiasco thing with the catfish,
mm.
uh, uh,
What was the
catfish
name of
thing.
the person again that did the catfishing?
It was another Samoan, Tuya Sosopo. Last name, I don't know the first name, but he's a Tuya Sosopo
Mm,
guy. So that's when he was coming in conflict with that, and yeah, and then I watched same thing with you too. I watched the Netflix, really understanding the whole scenario. Um, After I watched it, I sent a message to Manti, just saying that I kind of understand a lot more because we are friends on Facebook, and then he just kind of thanked me, and I just kind of thank him for being resilient because that's a huge obstacle to overcome and um, still be able to talk about it and rehash it and move on with life in a very good way. And he's doing really well from my understanding at the moment.
yeah.
So
And honestly, Mussy, I did not know that you were the same age and
mm,
grew up with Manti. Like I really didn't know that. This is like new information to me. And
mm,
just to kind of add, the first time I heard Manti was I went to St. Louis, right? So that's why I don't know the details about the Laie Elementary Rim. I was more in Honolulu, spent my time mostly over there with my uncle Norman. And so first time I heard of Manti was kind of messaging with kind of my classmates from St. Louis, and everybody was talking like, oh man, like I think we might not win the ILH this year, and that year when Manti was there, and I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, what's going on? Because Punahou was a walk in the park, man. I hated the Punahou games because by halfway through second quarter, I knew I was going to be sitting on the bench because the game was
and
over
not come back in because the
and
game
not
was
come
done.
back in. It's done. Like it's going to be a long night just sitting on the sidelines.
The
And so I
third and fourth strings will love that game. The third and fourth
exactly
stringers loves that game because they
that
can play.
was from when I was in high school at St. Louis. That was development for the future type of game, right? This is when,
Mm,
like you said, even the second string would be done by like middle of third quarter, and you're
mm,
going like through your third and fourth string. Mercy rule is already running, clock
mm,
don't stop. Even we're a heavy throwing team. So that's the first time I heard of Manti. Was really shocked when I heard he went to Notre Dame, right?
mm,
Like I was kind of shocked by that because secretly I was hoping as a BYU Cougar,
mm.
knowing he was a member of the church. I was, oh, maybe we have a shot, but he ended up going there. But anyways, so really, we're gonna jump into it. We found an interview that Manti did not too long ago, and we're just gonna listen to it, walk through it, have some commentary, and just really give some perspective on the experience that Manti had. So, with that being said, we're going to jump into it. Unless you have anything else to say, Mussy, before we just jump into this bad boy.
I was just gonna say that Netflix was also number one here in New Zealand. People were watching in New Zealand, and not only that, I listened to a lot of the Polynesian radio shows and stuff. They even brought up Manti's name. So Manti, everyone, especially
International.
yeah, internationally, wherever there's a Polynesian group, know of this person Manti Te'o. So yeah, Manti, everyone should have some kind of understanding of, or at least heard of his name, at least somewhere. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we'll jump right into it, man.
Manti Te'o is a top few college football player ever. Not just player on the field statistically, leader, example. I think you changed the game of college football. Like you were like a transcendent college football player. Dude, you couldn't turn on ESPN and not see something about Manti Te'o every day. You were at the pinnacle.
Yeah.
The very top.
Yeah.
And your whole life changed.
One of college football's biggest names is caught in the middle of a bizarre hoax.
Notre Dame
Superstar linebacker
the star player.
Manti Te'o.
Manti Te'o.
Manti Te'o
Manti Te'o
Had an absolutely astounding senior year.
whose heartbreaking loss of his girlfriend just before a big game made national headlines and made Manti Te'o the individual story of the college football season. But now it turns out his relationship was an elaborate hoax.
This was a very sophisticated hoax perpetrated for reasons we can't fully understand.
Now Netflix dropping a documentary on Manti Te'o's infamous online relationship.
The fact that
Any thoughts on that, Mussy?
Nope, just like what we kind of mentioned, he was talked about in every aspect of sports, and if you watch Sports Center, I think every week, because they will always have some kind of mention of Manti Te'o, because especially his senior year,
Yeah.
I feel like it was every week at least hear Manti Te'o's name. If you didn't hear on TV, you probably hear it in your local radio station when they touch the topic of sports. But yes, they're absolutely right. With Manti Te'o was definitely one of those players, kind of like one of those players that doesn't come very often, and he was that kind of player.
No, 100%. And I don't think it's an exaggeration that this guy is giving in the beginning, that he really is a elite level, like all time. And for me, from my personal perspective, is especially his senior year, when all eyes are on him, there is a high expectation, right? You have like this legendary school that has won champions. The expectation is, if we aren't contending for a national championship, it's a bust. Who cares if we have a winning record? And really, he not only met expectation, but in many ways far exceeded it. So just to kind of get an understanding that, to me, that's really where I don't feel that this is an exaggeration. Is he not only stepped up to the plate, but really elevated an entire school and a history to a really high level. So, right, let's jump into it.
the Netflix special didn't quite capture it, and it's important to go to the source, which is you. What was missed in that Netflix special?
One thing that not only the documentary hit on it, but one thing that every news outlet missed: my grandmother passed away, and it kind of took over the narrative. I had lost two people in the same day. My grandmother first, and then a few hours later, finding out that my girlfriend, or who I believe to be my girlfriend, passed. The unfortunate reality of that time was I mourned two deaths. Regardless if we found out months later that one of them wasn't real, I mourned both of them as if they did. I went through those emotions. I went through that process of mourning it and processing all of those feelings.
So that's the intro. Very intense.
Yes, I tell. Welcome to the roller coaster.
Thank you, bro. I don't really go on roller coasters, bro, so I'm excited for this one.
This will be your first one.
Yeah. My wife is a roller coaster one.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
You're doing some dieting right now, and you're telling me that you're not doing as many carbs anymore, and I was feeling the same way. You were looking a little small. So you doing okay? Feeling a little smaller?
Yeah. I think I'm definitely it's been a little bit of a challenge for sure, but I have a great perspective in my house because my wife is on her show prep and she has her show in 2 days. And so you could imagine, like, she's on 0 carbs.
Yeah.
And so whenever
you're getting a few.
Yeah. Like at least I'm getting.
Is his wife like an actress or something, or like a host? Do you know what his wife does, or where's she from? Is she from Hawaii, or where is she from?
I have no idea, but from
Okay.
the sounds of it, something in the physical fitness or something, maybe a trainer, something like that. But I was just thinking, what's your perspective on having no carbs, Tua, or is having little carbs bad, or what is that? I mean,
Well,
how
look
is
at
that?
me. You look at me. I'm definitely a carbs guy.
Me too. But yeah, he's like, oh dang, that's full on. But yeah, no, I
Yeah,
just thought.
I mean, I don't know exactly. I mean, he's in great shape. Obviously, I mean, look at his arms and stuff. He's working out, and then not eating carbs. I mean, that's pretty intense. I don't know, like if he's like I don't
Well, he
think he's
says his
playing any
wife
sports.
is not eating any carbs, but looks like he's cut down on the carbs. So I think that's fine. You always having a little of everything is, I guess, is good. Good
Yeah.
for you.
No, and that's, I mean, he's pretty heavy. He looks pretty heavy,
Mm,
you know, and there comes a point where muscle, when you have too much muscle, it actually holds you back.
mm.
So, but yeah, we'll see. I was just kind of interested. He's kind of talking about his wife, but I don't know anything about his wife. So, okay,
Yeah.
just wondering if you knew anything that, like, maybe she's a Laia elementary too.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, unless she's from another part of Hawaii. But
Hawaii.
I'm pretty comfortable, maybe like pretty sure to say she's not from North Shore side. But yeah,
Okay, 10-4.
Getting 2 meals where I have some carbs, and it's the carbs that I like. So you gotta have that perspective. It could be worse.
For those who are listening and not watching, you don't understand the joke, but the joke is Manti's huge. He's massive,
he said
and he's
to us.
as lean as he's been in 10 years, and
Yeah.
you're looking amazing.
Thank you, brother.
Honestly,
Thank
like I know what you've done.
Yeah, because you can see, especially on his thighs and his legs,
Mm,
he's put some muscle on that, and his arms. You can tell by his arms too.
mm.
To get to where
Mm.
you're at.
Yeah.
It's a huge sacrifice. We'll talk a little bit about that, but dude, you look like insane.
Thank you, brother. Thank
So,
you. It's for
nice
my
job.
kids. It's for my kids.
I want to talk about this hat. You were recently on the Pat McAfee show. He
Yeah.
commented on this. I know it's not Te'o, but
Yeah.
it feels and looks like it.
Yeah.
Did you guys end up doing a run of those?
So what we're doing is, and I said on the Pat McAfee show, the ending part of this is actually a logo for the company Gen.
Yeah.
And they do sales, and they were the first company that I actually did a public speaking event for, and I'm grateful for them because I always say, like, they were the start.
Yeah.
But their marketing guys.
So it sounds like he does a lot of speaking events now.
I think that's kind of like the majority of his time is doing public, like what do you like, those TED Talks kind
The
of
motivational speaker,
motivational speakers,
corporate speakers, keynote speaker kind of stuff.
Yes, yeah.
No, and that's pretty good, man. Like that's
him.
pretty decent money just to go and share your experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, that's good for him.
Genius. His name is Donnie. Unfortunately, he's a USC guy. But he had this bright idea to combine their logo with the first 2 letters of my last name. And it kind of looks like Te'o or Team Te'o, right? Yeah. And so he gave me a bunch. And so I've been wearing them around, and every time people see me, they're like, bro, let me get one of those hats. Yeah. And it wasn't until Pat, was like, bro, send some hats over. I was like, you know what? I called Donnie up. I was like, Donnie, I was just on a Pat McAfee show. Everybody asks me all the time about that hat. I was like, it's time we do something. However, I can't sell something with somebody else's logo on it, So he's in the process right now using his expertise of how to tweak it just a little bit so that it could be my own thing. And I don't probably get sued. I know the boys over there at Gen probably wouldn't do it, but I just want to be respectful of their stuff,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll see.
See. If Pat says do a thing, you just do a thing, right?
Yeah.
that was sick that you went on his show. That's got to be a dream, because he's number one far and away right now in sports media, and you did a really good job on there. I want to start off just kind of before we get into your story, and I know there's going to be a lot of people listening who already know your story, and some who don't, which will be fun to talk through this. But I want to start off with maybe a question to set the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, at this prime age, what would you tell your younger self?
I'll tell my younger self a few things. One, be an oak. And what I mean by that is, as you go through life, there's going to be a lot of different people pushing you, a lot of different pressures pushing on you, a lot of different aspirations that I may have. But to be immovable in who you are, to never forget your roots, to never forget what makes you you. And I would want my younger self to know that, because there was a period in time where I was trying to be like the crowd, that I was trying to fit in. And it took everything that was special in me and just literally threw it out the window. And I would want my younger self to know that you were created to do something special. But in order to do that special thing, you have to be an oak. You can't be swayed in any direction. You have to be firm in your beliefs, be firm in in the vision that you have for yourself. Um, and I would want that for not only my younger self, but all the younger people out there. Um, with all the pressures of life, and you see all of these little TikTok things, all of these fads that people are getting in, and these trending topics. Don't follow those. Follow the path that God set for you, and promise you, like if you're on His path, everything's going to work out for the better, and everything's going to work out for the good. So that's one of the things that I'll tell my younger self.
Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's relevant for anyone, right? In any aspect of your life, just be true to who you are. There is going to become, there's going to come a point that you'll probably, because of people you hang around with, that they might sway you to do certain things. I think this is relevant, being a teenager years, to do things that are not, good for you or your family. And Manti probably probably at the highest level
Mm-hmm.
of people pressuring him. We're talking about corporate media, high, high influential people in the state or probably in the country. Like, he's probably getting all of that at the highest level. But um, I mean, that's a good advice, for yourself in any aspect when you navigate through your life. Just always stay true to who you are. Make sure that you treat somebody, no matter if they're very important to somebody who maybe is in a difficult situation, to treat them all the same, and don't change who you are. So yeah, that's an important advice, and that's a good thing to tell to your younger self all the time, to always stay true to who you are and don't change. But yeah, that's my
Yeah,
thoughts.
I think one of the reasons why I think this podcast makes a lot of sense for us to kind of give our feedback is Polynesians are in the early stages of really breaking to the world stage, right? I think we're across the board, whether it's rugby, there's football, you have like WWE, you're having The Rock having the success that he's
Actors,
having.
yeah.
Like the Polynesians are starting to break out into the world stage now. For pioneers, and no, Manti Te'o is in that pioneer, because in collegiate sports, and
Mm.
he is, I don't know any Polynesian that's in near Manti Te'o's the level that he got to, right? There are going to be mistakes made by the pioneers, or breaking
Mm.
into a new level. And really, the greatest gift that Manti is gonna give Polynesians is this experience,
Mm.
is the pitfalls that he faced, and his ability to not only identify them, so that this next generation of Polynesians coming through, and whatever success that they have, that is going to be the biggest thing that he can contribute to these next generations that are coming up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is, hey, look, this guy is speaking from direct experience. He had the
Yeah.
highest of highs and the lowest of lows. He can give you feedback on the whole spectrum.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
really, to me, this is the biggest value that I hope that these next generation of Polynesians will take advantage of. Like he's saying, know the vision that you want to achieve. The only way you cannot be persuaded is, number one, like he's saying, you have to know your vision, And then number two, you have to have the dedication, the faith, and the diligence to stay on track, because everybody comes out. Once you have some success, people are trying to call you left and right. So that to me is what I think is the biggest thing that Manti is going to give to Polynesians, is this knowledge that he's gone through the experience. And anyone with wisdom will say it's better for me to learn from someone else, someone else's experiences, than for me to make the same mistakes. So hopefully our next generation is paying attention, learning the lessons that Manti is sharing, so that they can avoid the pitfalls and then just jump to the next level, So any thoughts on that, or we jump back in?
No. Awesome feedback too.
Really well said. And I totally agree with that. I think that's amazing. Post college. Before we do that, I was going to go directly into that, but I think it's appropriate to set the stage for who you were in college.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember, I think anybody who is a fan of sports, specifically football, would say that Manti Te'o is a top few college football player ever. Not just player on the field statistically, leader, example. I think you changed the game of college football. I think you changed the way that linebackers play defense. Like, you were like a transcendent college football player.
Just a quick question, Mussy. I'll give my own analysis, right?
Yeah.
And I granted, I didn't watch a lot of his games and stuff.
But you played the same position. I mean, linebackers, because he was a linebacker. Linebacker.
He played middle linebacker, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that was my dream position. I wish I always wanted to play middle, because it's a much simpler responsibility. But one of the things that I'm not trying to be overly critical, but I just wanted to bring up is, to me, his biggest strength was coverage. Like, he excelled. Like, I think as a middle linebacker for coverage was phenomenal. I think just from my little bit of observation, his run defense was really good, but not his strength, right? Like, to me, his biggest strength was on the
pass coverage.
He was
especially screens. Yeah.
Screens. And I think just reading and understanding where the ball was gonna go. I mean, that to me was kind of like his strength. But when you played with him, was he just, I mean, at the age, that level, he was probably just dominating across the board, huh?
Yeah. Because I think, and I watched some other broadcasts that he was already doing these poly camps in Utah and stuff, and he was going to, he was a freshman. He was already going up against juniors and seniors when he was doing these camps. So when he was playing in our freshman year, he showed it that he was playing with freshmen, and he was just dominating. Like, he was just dominating across the board. And then even after our games, he would still be picked to go and at least go with the varsity team. They
dress
needed
up
him.
with them.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, he was a big deal. And I think I agree with you too on the mental side of studying the plays and understanding your role. And he did change how middle linebackers would play pass coverage, because middle linebackers are more known as run stoppers. But to do good at run stopping, but really be excellent in pass coverage, that was
and that's why I kind of paused it there, because really that's where he really changed that, in my opinion. He was I'm not saying he was bad at run defense. He was good, obviously, but when you compare what he brought to the table, in my opinion, pass coverage versus run defense, I just felt like his pass coverage was it was special. His run defense was good, high caliber, but the pass coverage and the defense was, I just thought, off the charts. From the little bit that I do remember watching. and some of his biggest plays were interceptions.
Yeah.
And that to me was where, like he's saying, he changed the game, and that was a big part of it. Was really that run defense, or sorry, the pass defense.
Yes, and it was because of that he was so good at the pass coverage for a middle linebacker that kind of propelled him to kind of be nominated in the Heisman. So
Yeah.
it's really difficult for a defensive player to go
up
at
in the
least be
Heisman.
nominated. Yes, go to the Heisman. It's usually quarterbacks or an offensive.
It favors
player.
the offensive players way more. The fact that he was considered is phenomenal, and really, that's one of the reasons why he had such a huge impact as a middle linebacker. Is college football is about throwing. Like majority, there's no more. It's not the OIA where you're running the ball all the time. This is in college. Passing is a majority of the plays that you would see. So okay.
Thanks, bro.
Like it was like, dude, you couldn't turn on ESPN and not see something about Manti Te'o every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were at the pinnacle.
Yeah.
The very top.
Yeah.
Every award that you can get as a linebacker, except the Heisman. But you were runner up, right? Like basically every award that you could possibly get, you got.
Yeah.
Who won the Heisman that year?
Johnny Manziel.
Oh, geez.
And look, I'm glad he's okay and stuff, but he had a run around with some troubles and stuff. He's battling his own issues and stuff. But yeah,
Johnny Football, huh? Johnny Football. Ah, geez, yeah. Now we look back, it's like, yeah, pretty sure Manti probably should have won that. But you know what's funny? Speaking about Johnny Football, this sticks out to me because he just did an interview with somebody. Shannon Sharp, I think. Shannon Sharp. And the only reason why I remember this, because obviously I'm a St. Louis guy. Johnny Footballer, he went to Oregon for a visit, and he ran into Marcus. Right? So he ran into Marcus, and this is what he tells Shannon Sharp is he shows up, he runs into Marcus, and it's like, oh man, looks like a pretty good receiver, because Marcus is like what 6'3", he's tall, lengthy, really fast, and Johnny goes, oh man, are you a wide receiver? And Marcus goes, no, I'm actually a quarterback. And then he's like, oh yeah, I'm not coming here. Right? Like once he saw Marcus Mariota, he's like, yeah, I'm not going to compete against that. And so he said after that, he's like, yeah, I'm going somewhere else. I'm not going to Oregon because I'm not going to compete against that. So that stuck out to me just because I'm a St. Louis guy.
No, and they have kind of similar thing, right? They're more of a running, throwing quarterback. So I think Johnny made the right decision.
No, exactly. Because, Chip Kelly was looking for that kind of quarterback.
Yes.
Right. Because there was the running quarterback who could throw accurately, quickly, had the run option and the throw with that speed offense that they had there at Oregon when Chip Kelly was there.
Yeah.
So I want the audience to know that who doesn't know you, the few people, like you reached the peak all the way at the top.
It was a summit.
Like, you were like in the clouds. Like I think you got to the summit and then somehow you like had a booster pack, you went further. Insane. And your whole life changed eventually.
And I really just want to reemphasize that that's not an exaggeration, right?
Yeah.
Even me, who wasn't really paying attention to college football in that stage in my life, it was unavoidable to know who Manti was.
I have a question to is he the same level as being recognized probably as like a Jonah Lomu here in New Zealand? Like, Jonah Lomu coming from the high school ranks, they've heard of him, and then going playing the sevens and stuff, because everyone knows Jonah Lomu. Manti was would you say kind of like on that level as Jonah Lomu for the rugby side here?
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. Me, that's my personal perspective.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is just Jonah Lomu went into the professionals as a 19-year-old, went to the World Cup as a 19-year-old, and just dominated.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you're right.
That's the only difference. I mean, but granted, Manti couldn't do that because football doesn't allow that, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't just go from high school to the NFL. Like and the level of competition, it's hard. But for me, in regards to impact, now, if I were to compare college, if we were to say Manti's impact at the college level, I
Mm-hmm.
still wouldn't say that just because Jonah Lomu from day one. Like
Yeah.
Manti was a high recruit, but it took him, it was really his senior year. Like he was
Yeah.
doing great, doing really good, but his senior year was just
Yeah. Okay.
absolutely special. But Jonah was from day one. Day
Yeah.
one, Jonah Lomu showed up. Like I remember watching videos of like legends in rugby for the All Blacks, and then they had the black and white game, and Jonah Lomu showed up, and they're like, dude, Jonah Lomu just ran over all of us as
Yeah.
a 19-year-old,
Yeah.
you know, on the All Black and the All White game. And
Okay.
so that's it. And then Jonah's just, dude, that's
Okay.
just a freak of nature.
So there's the Manti Te'o level. Jonah Lomu's still on another level. That's what we're coming. Okay.
In my
Okay.
opinion, like
Yeah.
in my opinion, now if Manti went and did the same thing he did in college in the NFL, okay, I think it's a lot closer. But
Yeah.
just with the college impact, I don't know. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. What are your thoughts?
No. No. I just asked you that question because I was just trying to compare, just for our viewers that are not too familiar with American football, especially in
Dude,
college, and just trying to see what kind of rugby player. And I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's any other rugby player that just really shot up like that other than Jonah Lomu Tua, unless
mhm.
you can think of anybody else. But even now, I don't really know any rugby player that are like super up to that level. Like every week you hear them they're doing something great, or
the
on
the
that
the
level of the
only
media. Yeah.
the only one that I think is kind of at that level at Manti was maybe Jason Taumalolo, like
Oh
maybe
yeah.
4 or 5 years ago, right?
Okay.
Because Jason
Mm,
Taumalolo came up as an 18-year-old.
mm.
He came in, started in the NRL, wasn't like off the charts great, but did really well. And then like 3 years into the NRL, all of a sudden
Everyone
was
wants
like
his
a
signature.
man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So that would be someone that I would do comparable. But dude, in regards to Polynesians in college football, no one even close. Like
Yeah.
I don't know of
That's right.
anyone who comes close to Manti in what he did in college. Like I can't think of a single Polynesian that's coming close. Like even Marcus. Granted, I love Marcus,
Mm.
and Marcus is a St. Louis guy, and he won a Heisman, right?
Yes.
But he is an offensive player. He's a quarterback, right? He had so many advantages just by pure position.
Mm.
Um, that what Manti did, I mean, I don't know of a single Polynesian. Like the gap between Manti and whoever's in second place for college, it's not even close.
Yeah.
It's not even close. Like I can't think of
So
anyone on
yeah.
Manti's level in college for a
So we can say
Polynesian.
Manti is the top of the crop regarding Polynesians in
Yep,
college football, just being name recognition and achievements for his
100%.
time. Okay. Cool.
100%.
I
Like
agree. I agree.
and as a defensive, and what makes it more impressive is he was a defensive player,
Yeah.
right? Like there's like we were talking about earlier, football is just biased towards and off, and rightfully so, because the game is tickets are sold out of offense, and that's where a lot of the recognition is. The fact that he led and had the recognition that he had as a defensive player,
Mm.
that's that's really just to kind of let you know how special he was and what he did.
Nice.
There's one thing that, you and I, as we've gotten to know each other better, we actually do have a lot in common. But there's one thing that I haven't shared with you that we have in common, which is that both of us believed for a period of time that we had lost the love of our life.
Mm-hmm.
You believed that somebody who you were dating
Mm-hmm.
died.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that my wife died
Mm-hmm.
for a period of a few hours until I got to the hospital and realized she was alive still. And so I have empathy for you and what you went through with that. I know exactly what it feels like to think that you've lost somebody who you're really close to. I've heard you share before, I kind of want to start talking about everything that happened by asking, I've heard you talk about the fact that the Netflix special didn't quite capture it, and it's important to go to the source, which is you.
Yeah.
What was missed in that Netflix special? What key moments or experiences were missed?
Well, I think first, not a lot of things were missed, and I understand that within the time frame that we had, it was hard to get it all right. One thing that not only the documentary hit on it, in the way that it did, but one thing that every news outlet missed, right? Because this girlfriend became, people later on realized that we all realized that it was a catfishing incident, and it kind of took over the narrative. What the very one of the most important pieces was that my grandmother passed away, and that was something that almost it always rubbed me a little wrong, because it's almost like people just skimmed over that. Like it was like, oh, he lost a girlfriend. Oh, she wasn't real. She was fake. How could he do that? Well, I think what made it a big story was I had lost two people in the same day. My grandmother first, and then a few hours later, finding out that, my girlfriend, who I believe to be my girlfriend, passed a few hours later. So it became a bigger story because two people in my life passed. And I'm grateful that you shared what you shared, because the unfortunate reality of that time was I mourned two deaths. Regardless if we found out months later that one of them wasn't real, I mourned both of them as if they did.
100%.
So I went through those emotions. I went through that.
Hey, Masti, question.
Yeah.
What would be kind of a response? Because a lot of people will say, well, man, how did he not know this girl?
Mm,
Right? Like,
mm.
what are your thoughts on that? What would be a way to explain that he didn't know her, and how can you have a relationship with someone that you've never met, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to think in his shoes, just knowing, he already know here. So coming out of high school, he knew he was. I'm pretty sure he was the number one recruit linebacker in the nation, right? So he already had aspirations to make it to the NFL, right? Just
Mhm.
going through college was just that next step. And obviously, when you're in that college environment, you're trying to figure out, you know, school, trying to figure out what your coach is. You're kind of starting a little bit all over again. And sometimes, and I can understand his situation, maybe having a a long distant relationship was working for him because he can still focus on what he needed to do, even though and he did mention he tried to make some attempts to meet this person, but just for reasons, and just knowing Manti was always that good kid, because I did go to church with his family too, and his family were, they always gave you the benefit of the doubt, and I feel like Manti was that person. So even, and the person that was catfishing him, giving him all the reasons, Manti just being and I think this is pretty much a Polynesian thing, especially between Tongans and Samoans, being very loyal and always giving the benefit of the doubt, especially
Mhm.
if you have created some relationship. So I definitely see Manti as doing this long distance relationship, and also having the time that it wasn't affecting his goal of school football to get to the NFL, right? Because I know, if that was your goal, that's going to be your goal. And then you have this person that you have some kind of connection with, you can still develop a relationship and everything, and you're giving the benefit of the doubt to this person. I can see that. That's where I'm seeing. That's why I can see that happening. and why this went further to what it is. Because I'm just knowing Manti and his family and stuff. He's a good person who was well-rounded person, and feel like he was just a loyal person, and that's what he kind of just carried on to his college life and relationships kind of thing. So I don't know if that's what I'm just thinking too.
Yeah. No, I actually agree with you. And really, when we look at how dating functions now, dude, that's
Mm.
very normal now,
Normal now,
right?
yeah.
Like back in the day, that was kind of a little bit unusual. But now,
Mm.
dude, everything is digital. Everybody's dating now, I guess,
How
off
many
the
dating
apps.
apps are out there? Yeah,
Exactly.
so many.
So now in on our day and age, especially when nobody really knew what catfishing was, now it's like that's normal, right? So now
Yeah.
I think that question kind of answers itself, like, oh, it's all digital, like that's weird. But
Mm.
now we basically do everything digital, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No,
I
Tua, and another thing is it because of what Manti went through. I remember in school because I was studying criminal justice, emphasis in law enforcement, the cyber security and cyber criminal activity. We also learned about this incident too, of because Manti,
it
like what
was
you said,
national news,
it was
yeah,
national news, and he was kind of like the first big name that kind of got caught up in
in
this
that
thing. So
scenario.
it's just part of this whole. We had to learn about people using blackmail because there is that online dating, and then when you break up, you're trying to extort somebody from. So like, Manti's experience has carried on to different situations within policing and
Yeah,
other aspects of just security, safety, cyber safety,
it was
and
the
all of these
perfect
things.
storm.
Yeah,
Perfect storm. Someone well known, a
yeah,
scam,
yeah,
new type of scam, very early in development. We're still in this awkward stage of going fully digital. And I
yeah,
agree 100% with you that, like, it, and I think they mentioned that in the documentary, like, he's busy, man. Like,
yeah,
he's training. And I think people don't understand the amount of investment it takes to be great,
yeah,
right? Like I tell people, you cannot be great at something and be normal at the same time. And what do I mean by that? You cannot be a Manti Te'o caliber talent, because this is not just all raw talent. This is hard work. This is
yeah.
dedication. This is making mistakes on the field and learning how to fix them. Really,
Mm,
this is an ongoing thing, and um, that takes a lot of time and energy. So I think the fact that that consumed so much of his time and
yeah,
energy from elementary all the way through college, you're
yeah.
not going to be as nuanced in relationships, right?
Mm,
Because why? You're not spending all this time on building relationships with people where you figure out how people are
mm,
manipulative, right?
yeah,
And then you
yeah.
come from a Polynesian background where it's a strong social support system. You're
Mm,
not always exposed to people trying to take advantage of you. You know what I mean?
mm,
So it's not on the forefront of your mind that there are people literally setting up traps for you,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like that's not something that you're thinking of. And so it's this, and then to be of a good natured
yeah.
individual like he is, it's just this perfect storm of things. Back in the day, it seemed strange, but you fast forward now to where we are, not strange at all, right?
Mm,
It's not strange at all. And to me, it was just this perfect storm of so many things happening at the right time to him, and being a national figure. You know, if average Joe had this same catfishing had to him, nobody hears about average Joe,
mm,
right? Because
mm,
nobody's
mm,
talking about him, who's
mm,
sending
mm.
thousands of dollars to Nigeria every month because some princess in Nigeria
Yeah,
he's in love
yeah,
with or whatever.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to kind of discuss that nowadays
yeah.
it's very understandable to see how this scenario happened.
No, yeah, and I was thinking to maybe you can add some of your thoughts here, and I feel like maybe that's because I know, because Manti Te'o is of the LDS faith. We're LDS, and I feel like maybe that's another good reason for us young males to sometimes, when we go in, because I feel like I've grown a lot after my mission when I went the 2 year, just to navigate, because it put me in situations to understand people's behaviors, you
Mhm.
know, understanding what all these kind of little things. I never thought of it. You just go serve your mission, try to spread the word of God, Jesus Christ, the church. There's a restoration of the gospel. But then there's all these little stuff that you learn on people's engagement, of how their family functions, and also just in a different, you're by yourself and you kind of grow a lot. And I was thinking maybe, and that's what was Manti's growing. He was just trying to figure that out, and he was just trying to understand, and that he was not really understanding how people, like what you said, there's really bad people out there, evil, pretty much evil, that are going to manipulate you no matter to what cause to you or to your family. And I feel like that's a good part of going on a mission sometimes, that you understand. For me personally, grown a lot just understanding more of people's behavior, because you're kind of removed from your own family and you kind of know how your family functions. But when you're put by yourself with people you don't know, you really discover how kind of a good, not really how the world or people's society works, but you have a good understanding of how people are. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I was
Yeah,
just
and
thinking.
you're given an opportunity to say, "Hey, there is a world outside of your world."
Mm,
And as you try to understand that world, you start to see like, "Shana, I'm knocking on your door and I can see that you're inside the house, but you're not going to come answer the door." Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, yeah,
and like you're saying, you see certain behaviors and stuff, and it really just expands your mind. And this is just, I mean, Manti, I can't imagine, but he basically had the NFL on his shoulders since elementary school,
yep,
right?
yep,
Like that fact. And then I think his family, they seem like listening to the dad and the mom. They're a very focused, a very
yeah,
dedicated family. Like, that was the world, that was the focus. And like I said, you can't be great at something and be normal.
yeah,
Meaning, if you want to be really good at anything, you have to spend all your time and energy on that. So something has to suffer. And what could be suffering? Other knowledge and skill sets. That's why nobody can know everything,
yeah,
because we all only have 24 hours in a day and we can only spend so much time on a couple things. and
yeah.
and this was just one of those scenarios where, it was the perfect storm, and unfortunately he got caught in that perfect storm.
Mm,
Okay.
Process of mourning it, and processing all of those feelings, to mourn my grandmother and to mourn who I believe to be my girlfriend, right? So that was that is one detail. Those are two details: one, my grandmother passed, and two, that regardless if in January we all found out that it was a catfishing thing, in September or August when it happened, September when it happened, when I found out the news, I mourned them both. And so I went through that process for two people. So that was one thing that's just one thing, for me, that that I've accepted, that I had to go through that. I went through that. And regardless if it was something that we found out months later that it actually was a catfishing thing, I didn't know it, obviously. So I mourned it. So if anything, that allowed me to go deeper into a world that I'm now able to empathize with people, like how you're able to empathize with me because you've experienced those emotions. Just because we all found out that it was a catfishing thing, I can empathize with somebody because I didn't know it was catfishing, but I experienced those emotions as if I lost
Mhm.
two loved ones. So anybody that has lost a loved one, I can empathize with you.
And honestly, Mussy, when I listen to him,
mm,
he's got to be either the greatest actor in the world or very sincere. And I lean
yeah,
towards the guy just seems genuinely sincere, right? Like, when I hear him talking and saying, "I actually mourned," and he really cared. I mean, when family, and especially, I know I like to make fun of like Laie and Kahuku and the North Shore, but when you grow in a close knit community like that and taking care of and caring and being committed to other people in the community, that's honestly to me the biggest asset that Kahuku as a school has, is that community. When you have someone that grows up in that, and not just grow up in it, but really believe and buy into that, we're connected as a community. I don't have to be with you every day to care about you, right? Like one thing that I kind of noticed in our culture, the Polynesian culture, because we would have cousins and aunts and uncles that you would see once every 3 years, maybe 4 years. But the lack of face-to-face time and the lack of, and the great distance didn't really change the connection that you would have, right? And that relationship. So for me, his sincerity and the fact that our culture, you don't have to see someone every day to care about someone, right? You don't have to interact with them to have that kind of dedication. And he seems like a very loyal kind of guy. Like you were saying, he gives you the benefit of the doubt. He just wants to be helpful, came from a very sincere place. He learned from this experience that people will take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's coming from a sincere place. The bad actors see that as a weakness and take advantage
and
of
they'll
that.
exploit it. Yeah, and they'll exploit it. Yeah.
So
I was just thinking, no, too. I was just thinking, growing up, I don't know if it was the older two or the older three. It must be a Tongan thing. They always say never take your girlfriends too seriously if you're gonna have a girlfriend. It was just maybe a Tongan thing, and even when I was like, even even sometimes most Tongans that I always know having a girlfriend and stuff is it's just almost like a play around kind of thing. Not play around, but it's almost like just it's not don't carry too much. I don't know a lot to it. And I've always and I was just here when I heard him say, his he was mourning his girlfriend and his grandmother. I think me personally, I would never, especially if it's just a girlfriend, just me personally, must be a Tongan thing, or must be, or maybe, or what do you start families? I would never put that in the same thing. But I don't know about you, Tua. But I don't know.
yeah, no, I agree. The difference that, no, and I agree 100%, right? Like,
Yeah.
even to this day, my wife is like, why don't you feel sorry for me? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I love you, but like,
Yeah.
there's certain things that like, or why don't you like empathize more with other people? And I'm like, no, it's because it'll be fine. Like, we'll
Yeah.
survive.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like it's not the end of the world. But what I'm getting to for him, like when I watched that Netflix,
Yeah.
he seemed to sincerely buy into like, I am invested in you. Like, you know what I
Okay.
mean? Like that was something that he took seriously. Like, I don't know if it's his personality or what, but he seemed to really engage with anyone who needed help. Right.
Okay.
And that to me is kind of like a personal character. And when you grow up in a community, and I don't know, his family seems like a very loving and caring family. But now what I got from him, he was someone who very emotionally invested.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. For me, like you said, it's like it's fun. Hey, yeah, we'll talk
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
talk. But
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
if you died, I'm gonna be like, well, I guess. I mean, I don't really know
Yeah.
you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Okay.
but
Okay.
he for me, I feel like he was very sincere, and he seems to be the type of person who,
Yeah. It could have been just his personal belief, what he was, just who he is as a person, of how
yeah.
he viewed relationships and stuff. Yes. Yeah.
Well, and I think, and I don't know if it's because of playing sports, like being a leader,
Mm.
to have your team buy into you, you have to show them that you're emotionally invested in them. right? Like
Yeah.
this could be something that he had developed that was very successful in a sporting scenario that is also helpful in life, but it also exposes you, especially if you don't have the maturity and the understanding that you can be taken advantage of, that yes, it's very effective in sports in building your relationship with your teammates. But when you take it out into general society where there's a lot of bad players, where in a team, you're all committed to winning, right?
Yes.
And you
And you're
can
playing the
invest.
same rules, and that's the thing. You're playing the same rules.
Exactly.
When you're out of the football field, there's no rules pretty much.
Yes,
And
exactly. But if you come with that mentality, and remember,
yeah, yeah,
he's not out in society
yes, yes,
mixing and mingling to understand, like, oh, I did
yes,
this with someone and they totally took advantage of me and blah blah blah. It's
yeah,
like, no, he was all in sports. He was about getting better. He's surrounded with his family.
yeah,
And that was a safe space for him to be effective. And that type of style
yeah,
was very effective for that scenario. When he took it and tried to apply it with people that are not good actors who are taking advantage of him, it put him in a position to be taken advantage of.
Mm. Okay, good point. That's all. I was just thinking about that, and I just had a little smile. It's like I was just having some reminiscing of things that I always call it. Some talking friends who would just do with their thing, and I was just like, I was just talking about that, mentioning that.
Okay.
So
Not fair question. Fair question.
And I think that's what makes me stronger. That's what makes me more capable, and I'm grateful that I am given those gifts to be available to other people in that way.
Is there a chance that she could have died, your girlfriend, and nobody ever find out that it was a catfishing thing, and your life just go on, and you still believe to this day? Is there a chance that that could have happened, or was it for sure going to unravel at some point?
You know what was so
Before he answers that, Mussy, what are your thoughts? Do you think that this eventually would have revealed itself?
I feel like yes, because of his status at the time. There's always going to be someone looking for something to knock you on or to say this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make they're just because of who he is. I feel like there's a very high likely it will still come. Um, yeah, just knowing because of who he is. If he was just a mediocre player, Dua, or maybe just somebody that wasn't like the number one recruit coming to that school and having a buzz and stuff and doing really well, maybe not. But because he was like just like top caliber and people are always following him, I feel like yes, but I'm not too sure. But I'll just say yes.
Yeah, my gut feeling is I think eventually he would have found out.
Mm,
But like you said, if he wasn't a nationally recognized
yeah,
player, it would have been like, yeah, I would have found out. Maybe Notre Dame would have been a thing inside Notre Dame, and then it would have just
yeah,
gone away, right?
yeah,
But the reason why it became a national is just because of the caliber and the recognition that he had.
mm,
But I think eventually he would have found out, because if we take his word for it, and I believe that he's sincere, somebody like that dies, he's gonna find out, well, when's the funeral, right? When is this, like, I want to talk to people, I want to, and then I
yeah,
think eventually if he were to follow that thread and pull on that thread, he would have found out. And once he found out, maybe it would come out later or not, but I think eventually he would have found out. I don't know if you can get around that or not, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because in the documentary, he just made some phone calls, right, to
yeah,
cousins. Oh, you heard this girl, you heard this name, and they're like, yeah, I
yeah,
think we know of her, right?
yeah,
Blah blah blah. But when somebody dies, it's not difficult, especially if people say they know. It's like, well, when's the funeral? When is
yeah,
it gonna happen? I want to go in and talk and
yeah,
go to the funeral, right? Especially if he says, like, he's saying, I really cared and loved and thought she was real. Though I didn't meet her, I do want to at least go to her funeral.
mm,
So I think eventually he would have found out, is my 2 cents. we'll see what he says.
It was so difficult at that time was where my career was and where it was going. So after I got the news, right, I immediately had a perspective change about what was important and what was not important in my life. And it was so beautiful because when I made that perspective change, my play on the field just took off. You know, it was like I don't care about the parties. I don't care about the after the game festivities.
Yeah.
The only thing that I care about is honoring my family, honoring my loved ones, the ones that are here and the ones that have passed. Trying to be an inspiration to people, trying to be somebody that people can look to who have gone through some trying times and say, like, look at how he's handling these situations, right? And being that pillar in their life or that example to them, like say, hey, listen, I've gone through some tough times, but I still have chosen to, one, be grateful, two, go about my business in a respectful, loving way, and to do it with a lot of class. So I wouldn't know, bro, if nobody would have found out, if, you know, because the day that everybody found out what it was, I found out. So I actually found out like
That's terrible.
30 minutes before everybody found out, you know what I mean? So if nobody found out, I wouldn't have found out, you know? So it kind of would have been just like one of those sad moments where we mourned the death of two people. Like I mourned the death of two people that I loved at that time, you know? I mean, obviously I love my grandmother forever. So, yeah, I don't know. That's actually a really good question. I definitely would think that my life would be different than it is now.
That's what I was going to say. Like,
yeah. So he's saying he's not sure, but my
He's not
perspective,
sure.
he would have found out. Like if you when you really care about someone like that, you would want to go to the funeral. And as you dug into where's the funeral, when is it happening, I think he would have found into some. This just doesn't seem right.
And he said he became more focused, right? Because now those two
Yes.
people passed away. He said it really intensified his focus, the not caring of what parties or whatever a typical college student would like to just be part of with his friends. He just said it was just all football now,
Yeah.
you know, and
And
really just probably just really helped him just to really
focus.
and hone in his skills to probably perfection. And yeah.
No, and that's what I'm saying. Like what he did his senior year is spectacular, right? And he's giving insight that this is some of the reasons why, right?
Yeah.
Is when a lot of people totally underestimate how much mentality and mental your mindset and how much you're carrying mentally and emotionally, it has an impact. This is the reason why me personally, I didn't like hakas and stuff before the game. Right? Because to me, to do a haka right, it takes a lot of emotion and energy. And I remember one time doing a haka before a game, and I just felt drained right after. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a fan of this. I want to save.
At St. Louis, tour.
No, not at St. Louis, just like in Tonga when we were on
you were doing the league,
national team. Yeah. When we played against Australia, when I was the captain of the national team, and so they said I needed to lead the haka, and I would do it, and then I was like, man, like this takes energy because you want to do it right, right, and so you get into it, and then I just noticed because I'm like the opposite. When I get ready to go to a game, if I can get about after you do your warm-ups and you come in and you get your pads before you go back out onto the field, I would love to have like a 10-15 minute nap.
Okay.
Sleep. And I listen, like all the guys would be listening to like crazy music. I listen to very laid back because I'm trying to save mental, emotional, and physical energy because once the game starts, it's 100 miles an hour until the wheels fall off. You know what I mean? So to me, my approach was very different. And so that was my way of getting my mind right and trying to get focused and not to feel like anything is distracting me or sucking any energy out of me. I needed all that energy just to stay focused and to execute. And that really helped me in the ability to execute. And so I can really see, like, dude, I can see why, like, he was doing some special things on the field. Is he was not distracted. Like Garrett, granted, he's going through some suffering and pain,
Yeah.
because of the loss, but it also relieved a lot of distraction,
Mm.
a lot of energy and like I said earlier, his ability to perform under the pressure. Now I think we're getting understanding why he didn't feel that pressure is because, dude, my family is what matters most to me. And once he got that clarity that this is the most important thing,
Yeah.
the expectations of a historic or a well-recognized university and a program that wins, that pressure was off of him, right? And that's really why he was. It makes sense to me now why he was able to perform on such a special level his senior year.
Yeah.
How? If this never breaks,
Yeah.
you're just believing I had this girlfriend in college, she died. It's really now you're married, you've got kids, your life moves on.
Yeah.
Like, do you think your career in football is materially different if that doesn't break?
For sure. And the reason why I say that is because what happened to me, what my life was like and what my reality was like after the whole catfishing thing came up, that's what created me. That's what created this. Was the scrutiny, was the hate, was the jokes, was the memes, was the new narrative that now was, when just a few days before that, it was Summit, Manti. It was, this guy plays football at such a high level, but his character is at a even higher level. And for some people, they just couldn't wrap their heads around the fact, like, how can somebody be that good at football but be such a good human?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's what put me up there.
Yeah.
And so when the narrative shifted and the narrative now became, man, that guy's an idiot. Like, what a fool. And then the memes came out, then Halloween came on, everybody started dressing up, and I would get tagged in all the jokes, and then all the news outlets started joking about it, like that rocked me to my core, like to the foundation of who I am. It tested that, like my life for the next 3 years was a wreck, because I didn't understand at that time how heavily I had depended on people's opinions of me, because it was all positive, and it helped me to continue to do what I was doing. But I was feeding off of it, and I didn't know until somebody came along and just kicked that kickstand out, and that I just went face flat. And I'm like, okay, well, who am I? And I literally, bro, had to build myself up from square one, brick one. I had to lay it brick by brick. And in a long-winded answer, if people didn't find out, if I didn't find out, I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be immovable. I wouldn't be an oak. I wouldn't be somebody who walks around day to day grateful for the fact that I can walk around, be comfortable, because there were those days where I didn't want to go out in public. There was those days where every time I went down the aisle in the grocery store, somebody was saying something, and it wasn't positive. There were days where somebody would ask me for a picture and they would make fun of me. You know what I mean? Like, those moments of having somebody tell you who you are, those moments of somebody telling you that you're a fool, those moments are the moments where I had to come to grips with myself and, like, bro, like, you got millions of people telling you that you're this. Who are you? You need to figure that out for yourself, because the more you let people tell you who you are, and the more you start to believe them, the more that your foundation, this existence is going it's going to be a living hell. And so I literally had to crawl myself out of that hellhole, and that's what created this.
Any thoughts, Mus?
I mean, there's a lot of things. You know, like he said, it was interesting. He said, like, you know, that what's kind of fueled him, especially all the positive feedback, because it was always positive from my view of Manti Te'o, even from sixth grade. You know, going up, and it was good, and you know, you're with family stuff, and I think that was part of the growth that, you know, now he was away from family. Now it's more of a distance, and he's kind of a little bit on his own. And Notre Dame, but he was still being fed, you know, he's the top because he was performing well, can do anything, getting the positive feedback from media. And, you know, just that whole challenge of now that people don't view you the same way, and people probably a lot of people who said he could do whatever, he can do whatever, and he was the best at everything. Probably the same people that probably made jokes of him or
Mm-hmm.
tagged him when he was going the other way. And man, that's, you know, that's just a lot of props to Manti, just getting mentally, just getting away from that and still being a positive person now and be able to share it very freely and just be in a good state. Yeah, just a lot of props to him because that that that's mentally went through went through some challenges to overcome. But yeah, that's just my thoughts.
No, and this is one of the reasons why I feel that he's very sincere in this whole story. That happened to him is, and what he's sharing is true. Is obviously I haven't experienced to the degree or the level that he did.
Yeah.
But in the few instances that I did experience it, I can empathize with him. Right? I can empathize with him because I mean, when I left Tonga at 15 years old, when I left there, and you know, you build this idea of who you think you are, especially when everybody is like, you're the man,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. Giving you the good comments all the time,
yes,
right?
you know, just feeding that little ego that you
Yeah.
have. And you know, when I was coming up in rugby
Mm.
and doing well, and then doing the rugby league and doing really
Playing the
well,
national teams, yes,
play on the
yes.
national team, and then right after the national team, when the coach comes and says, hey, I want to talk to your parents, and
Yeah.
then to tell your parents, hey, we want to offer your son a contract to come to Australia. And you know, the Penrith Panthers, because they were like
Panthers.
the garbage team at the
Yeah.
time. Like the Penrith Panthers were like terrible. And so when they're coming and they're saying, hey, we really want your son to come over, you know, we'll give him a contract. And then your whole school hears about it, and you're the first high school kid to get a rugby contract while still in high school. Like, you build this idea of yourself, right? And then, you know, to eventually go to St. Louis, you know, because of, for spiritual reasons, not going and taking the contract to Australia, go to St. Louis and be sixth string, right? And go to practice every day and know it doesn't matter how hard I try and practice today, I am not going to play. It like, it was like within a month and a half period, went from, yes, I am the one that everybody looks at to say, hey, I could just show up to practice every day, go through the motions, and I know I'm gonna play. Like, there's no question about it.
You've
And
already built a certain trust and output of your performance that you can do whatever you want in practice. You're still gonna get the
exactly,
first try,
yeah.
first try at the game. Yeah,
And then go to St. Louis and then be like, holy crap, I have to not only compete with high level athletes, like a lot of these guys are D1 athletes, but they've been playing football since Pee Wee level. And, I was 15 when I left Tonga, and St. Louis wanted me to come in as a freshman slash sophomore because they didn't realize how young I was because I was a senior in Tonga,
Mm.
right? And so I remember still sitting down with Mr. Valente. He was like the guy in charge of admissions. And when he saw, because my initial plan was going as a senior because I was so arrogant, right? I was in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna come here, learn football. I'm just gonna kill it. I just give me one season and I'm gonna just perform off the charts. So that was my mentality when I came in because that's what I was used to, right? You show up, game day, we'll make things happen. And so when they saw that, my man, dude, he's 15, like he could come in as a freshman and play 4 years. And then, he said, oh, the only issue you might have is your senior year. You might not be able to play in the playoffs, right? Because you would be 19. And so you would be the age difference, whatever. And I was like, nah. I was 3 months away from graduating in Tonga. I'm not coming in as a freshman, right? So we came in as junior. And so that was the compromise. But this is why I really believe in his stories, because I went through it on a smaller scale, obviously not on the scale that he did because of the national pressure. But you have to ask yourself those questions, because when you show up to practice and you're the dummy now, instead of being recognized for breaking so many barriers, I really, really see that's true to me. It rings true to me, which is why I believe in his story. And I think he's very sincere.
Yeah.
And like you said, kudos to him, man. He could have easily turned out a very bitter person, very angry person, and be the victim and just hate everybody and everything. Because why? You guys just loved me yesterday, and now you guys just threw me in the trash like garbage. It's impressive for him to come back from that.
Yeah.
I was actually expecting the opposite answer. I thought you were going to say if this didn't break, it would have helped me. It would have helped my career. It would have helped, but
it would have helped the career,
but not
the person
who you are.
And the person to me is way more important than the career.
Well said.
And this comes back to how much it's a mental game, right?
Yeah.
When you have this, and I was telling this to my daughter, to Andrina, when she started wrestling.
Yeah.
I told her, I said, I'm going to tell it to you. You're going to have to figure out how to develop a winning mindset. But I'll tell you right now, how I built a winning mindset? You build this idea in your head that's not real, but you have to do it because that's how you get the confidence and the mentality to perform. And she goes, well, what do you mean? It's like, how when everybody listens to like professional athletes where they talk and they're like, oh, they're so conceited. Like they say, I'm the greatest ever and blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, I remember those days. You have to tell yourself that. Because you have to build this idea of yourself that you're unstoppable. And if you don't do that, then you won't be able to perform to a level that's unstoppable. You have to lie to yourself. And so you build this false idea of yourself, and that's what you have to portray. You have to like put it on yourself to be like, yeah, I don't care if it's a semi truck in front of me. I'm going to run right through it. You know what I mean? You have to build, and it's an unhealthy mentality because it's disconnected from reality. The reality is I am not Superman, but you have to put that in your mind, and it's a very unhealthy mentality. And, granted, what happened to him with this whole hoax, as you can tell, it demolished his confidence, right? He was having a hard time figuring out who is Manti Te'o, let alone perform on an elite, very, very elite,
High level. Yeah.
high level. Like, dude. Yeah. I
And
mean,
being
what are your thoughts?
consistent. No,
Yes.
Just to his experience of just trying to perform at a high level and also trying to deal with naysayers, and especially when when people are figuring out that the girlfriend is not real, and him just trying to, because man, I'm just trying to think, man, even in your college years, you don't really know really you know, who you are, and for him to come out of that and deal with that at the same time, play football, and it did affect him, especially that early years of his NFL. But he still had he did really well because he was still trying battling that, and he still had a good long year, playing the NFL. I think he played 5 or 6 years, 7.
Get retirement
That-
from the NFL. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's man, just a lot of kudos to Manti, man.
He
It's a
lived
big deal.
in just his college and NFL career, he lived a full lifetime that other people wouldn't even experience in their whole life. So sweet. We'll jump
Yeah.
back into it.
That way more important. Like I am more than confident, bro, because of the kid who I knew played that senior at Notre Dame with that confidence that he had at Notre
See?
Dame.
Yeah.
There's no way that I wouldn't, one, still be playing right now. Two, wouldn't had 2 big paychecks right now. 3, I definitely wouldn't be sitting here with you because I probably would have a big house in Hawaii or in California somewhere, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's just no way, because who I was on the football field as an athlete, as a linebacker, as a bro, you couldn't touch me on the football field. It didn't matter who you were. So as a football player, do I think that my career would have been different? 100%. Why? Because I knew the confidence in which I played with when I was at Notre Dame.
Mhm.
And more importantly, I knew the lack of confidence I played with when I first got into the NFL. And my play in the NFL reflected I was garbage my first 3 years, like garbaggio, bro. It was a scramble for me just to like make a play. Like it was.
See, and that's what
Mm.
we're talking about right there, Mussie. It's just the emotional impact that, like, the idea that
Yeah.
you have to build of yourself, and once that false sense of reality cracked, man, hard to recover from that.
So I will say, here's my question, and then what is a healthy mindset to be competitive but at the same time be real with yourself, or do you really have to build this false perception of yourself to really go to perform at that very high level? Like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give
don't know.
you. I mean, obviously, I can give you what I feel like I've come up with, right?
Yeah.
The question, and this comes back to more of it, to me, it's all spiritual, right? This is all spiritual, and that is, what does God want you to do? Right? Because in reality, the reason why you have to build up this false idea, because the source of the success, and I know Manti is a religious person,
Mm.
but he confirms to me that he used the same mentality to be successful. And that was, I am going to make this happen. And that's a false mentality. So the what I'm getting to is this. To me, the healthiest mentality, which is what he's saying, what matters most to me is the person, right? To be successful in football and whatever career you have, that is heavily a temporal skill sets,
Mm.
right? Like you have to, that's winning in a temporal world. When you're winning in the temporal world, guess what you're losing at? Usually,
The
if that's your
spiritual.
focus, in the spiritual. So, but the good news is, if you're winning in the spiritual world and God intends for you or blesses you in your efforts in the physical world will take care of itself.
Mm.
So
Okay.
the way I would put it is this: you train, you do everything that you can, but you say, the only way I'm going to be successful is if God blesses me to be successful. It's not because of me, because the reality is you can't be, like I said, you can't be great spiritually
Mm.
and be great temporally. I mean, sorry, let me take that back. You cannot be great at focusing on temporal
Yeah.
and be great at spiritual at the same time. There's a trade-off. However, if you focus on the spiritual, and then if the Lord says, I will also bless you in the temporal, then you can have both. But you have to start with the spiritual. But guess what? Many times when you take the spiritual, guess what you have to sacrifice?
The temporal.
The temporal. There are scenarios that you get both, right?
Yeah.
But that's not always the case, because why? When you're going on the spiritual, there's a sacrifice, and sometimes the sacrifice is what you wanted to achieve in the temporal may not happen, and you have to be willing to sacrifice that. If you're not willing to sacrifice the temporal piece, it will hold you back spiritually. And so that's my answer. My long way of saying the answer is you go train, you do everything you can to be successful without taking away from the spiritual, and really at the end of the day say, my priority is the spiritual. So when I hear him say the person is more important than the career or the athlete, what he's saying is the spiritual is more important than the temporal. That's really what he's saying. And so that's why the scripture says, seek ye first the kingdom of God. Right? And then these other things will be added unto you. Because if you seek the spiritual first, if it's meant to be for you to have the temporal will take care of itself. But if you seek the temporal first, you're not going to be having the spiritual. At the end of the day, the more you build up the temporal, the greater the sacrifice it will be to let go of the temporal to pursue the spiritual. If that makes sense, Masi.
No, it does.
It's a mentality of, if I win, it's not because of me, it's because God blesses me to do so. And that to me is why it's a healthier mentality. And that's what I told my daughter. You got to figure it out for yourself. I can tell you, I did this one mentality, but as life has gone for me, I've realized that's a very unhealthy one. But if I focus on the spiritual, and if it's meant to be to have the temporal, it's much easier. That's possible. But when you have the order wrong, things can go bad very quickly.
Great point. Great points.
All right, let's see what else Manti says here.
It's like voices screaming in my head every play, like, bro, are you sure what you're doing? Like, don't let him juke you out. Like, are you sure this is the right tackle? Are you sure this is the right angle? Like, are you sure you're not too high? Are you sure? Like, don't. And then right when I'm about to hit somebody, locked, it's frozen. Just, bro, I missed so many tackles my rookie year and my second year. Compared to that kid at Notre Dame, he's running through fools. You know, like there is nothing. You know what I mean? There's the confidence is at an all.
And actually, now that we're having this conversation, the one game of his that I did watch was against Alabama. And
the national championship.
Yes, and he did not have a good game. And I think it was this scandal already out at that time?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was coming out that people were questioning him. He didn't answer. He was just saying he was focusing on the national championship game before. Yeah.
And
stories were coming out.
Yeah. And so what he's describing there explains his poor performance even before he got to the NFL.
Yeah.
The national championship game, he did not have a good game. Yeah. And actually that may be the driver behind my thoughts as to why he wasn't as good as a run defense, because that may have been the only full game. All the other stuff I saw were highlights.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I'm thinking maybe he was a better run defender than I thought, but I remember him missing so many tackles that
Alabama
game. And I was like, oh man, did they just find this guy's weakness is run defense? Because a lot of the highlights I saw, man, there's a lot of defensive pass plays, interceptions. I was like, oh yeah, wait. They may have found his weakness, but the reality is, now that I'm hearing this, I think it was just mental. Like they just got him at the wrong time. If he was as confident as he was earlier in the year, may have been a totally different game.
Different story. Yeah.
That championship game, because what he's describing there, now that we're having this conversation, I'm like, dude, that sounds like what I remember him doing on the national championship.
National championship game.
Was he was just, dude, he couldn't make a tackle to save his life.
Yeah. Yeah. Even though he was in the position, like when he describes, when
he was right there.
He's about to, when he's right there, he just couldn't bring it down, and he just kind of say he was going,
because he's thinking too much. He's
shock,
thinking. It's thinking too much. It's no longer instinct where he's just proactive and things just happen. He's thinking too much. He's thinking too much, and that's what, when you have to think, you're late, right? You just have to. It just has to happen naturally. That's how you know you're in the zone. Is you don't even think, but you know what the play is, and you just make it happen. It just happens. And what he's describing is, his confidence was so low, he was doubting everything. And once you have that, you're always gonna be too late or miss the tackle.
Yeah,
all-time high. And I honestly believe, like anybody who wants to do anything great in this life, whatever you choose to do, you have to, number one, have confidence that you're the best at what you do. And that kid at Notre Dame had that. The kid for the first 3 years at San Diego Chargers, total 180, bro.
My only addition to what he said is coming back to the mindset we talked about.
Yes, the temporal and the spiritual.
Yes. To me, what he's saying is, I would just tweak it just a little bit, because to say you're the best means that you're buying into that idea that I'm the unstoppable one.
Yeah.
Right. But when you're coming from a spiritual perspective, it's like, dude, the reason why I'm doing so great is because it's God. Granted, I still have to work. I still have to build the stamina. I got to lift the weights. But I know that there's always someone stronger than me. There's always someone faster than me. I'm not the best player in the world. It's just I have the cheat code. And what's the cheat code? The creator of the world is on my side. So honestly, I'm unstoppable because he's on my side. And even then, I'm willing to say, if I don't win and if I don't execute, it's because he's saying, Tua, there's something more important than winning, right? And you have to be willing to sacrifice that. But when you're coming from a temporal mentality, that's unacceptable. You cannot accept that you're not the greatest in the world. You cannot accept that there's someone bigger, stronger, faster than you. Because why? Once you accept that, the whole ego and the mentality falls apart, and then you can no longer perform. So that would be the only slight adjustment I would do. Is I understand what he's saying, but I would just adjust it differently. Is you would have to rely that God is making you the greatest, and God will determine when you're no longer the greatest at it, because it's him. It's up to God, and you have to be willing to sacrifice that at any moment.
I was just thinking too, because that's such a easy way to navigate even life too, like just on a mental state. Because I mean, if you take care of spiritual things, they always say if you just take care of spiritual things, your temporal goals can be achieved. But at the same time, you have to accept sometimes your temporal goals is not what Heavenly Father wants for you, and you have to be willing to change them or maybe pursue something different. And that's that can be a difficult things for someone. And that's why some people they will tailor off the spiritual side and say, okay, I'm gonna go all in on this temporal goals because this is what I want. But it's what you want. But sometimes that's not what God wants. And that's why I feel like maybe that's why people do go through that challenge a lot of, I'm just gonna focus and put everything that I am the best. I'm doing it all on my own. I'm putting all this time to this, that, to be the best. So I was just thinking that, because when you do focus on the spiritual side, you have to be willing to take some losses. Two, maybe you gotta change your career or what you're doing right now. This is not what God wants for you. You know what I mean, Tua? But Yeah, you just it's those things that I feel like maybe that's why people do turn away from the
Well,
spiritual
no,
aspect side, right?
100%, because this is, I even told this to La Tutama. Do you
Mm.
know how I would play sometimes, Masi? I'm willing to
How?
die on this field.
Mm.
I don't think when you're playing against someone, because really that's all you're saying is how bad you want to win,
Yeah.
right? And when it's just a temporal mindset, oh, you think you're tough, whatever, you have to build this false idea in
Mm.
your head. Oh, I'm willing to die. I don't think you're willing to die. Like literally, I have thought in such ways is, oh, I don't think you're willing to pay the price to win. I think I'm willing. And in my mind, I was like, I'm willing to just boom, do
Yeah.
whatever it takes. And if whatever happens, happens. Right. And that's why I said it's a very unhealthy mentality. But I do want to make a comment before I forget, Masi, is Manti, whether he recognizes it or not, from my opinion, was praying and doing the right things
Mm.
and asking. I don't know Manti, right?
Mm.
But my experience says his sincerity in trying to do what God wanted led to this. Like,
Mm.
like God was saying, like he may have been praying, I just want to do what you want, Heavenly Father. In
Mm.
his head, he's thinking football. Heavenly
Mm.
Father wants me to do football,
Mm.
but he was pursuing that and he was trying to do what he felt, and he may not have realized it at that moment. Is, dude, you can't have the temporal football stuff be the focus if you're telling me I want to do what you want, Heavenly Father, right?
Mm.
So my suspicion, and if I ever meet Manti, which is probably never, is to ask him, what were your prayers like during these years leading up to?
Mm.
Do you ever remember praying like, Heavenly Father, thank you for everything, but let me know what I can do to do what you would want me to do, right?
Mm.
And it
Mm.
would lead to this. Like at the end of the day, it may have been an answer to his prayers, even though his thought was something different. Like he's saying,
Different.
Heavenly Father, I want to do what you want to be done. And in his mind, he was thinking, go NFL player, take care of my
Yeah. Yeah.
family, be a fantastic example to all the Polynesians on how to get success. And God goes, hey, Manti, you asked me, I'm going to give it to you. It's not going to be what you expected, but when
Mm.
I'm done with you, you're going to be so much happier with whatever the final product is, which is already what he's kind of saying. Like,
Yeah.
the person is more important than the NFL career. Obviously, that's not what he thought before everything happened, but he must have been at least doing the right things and interacting with God in a way that God would say, I'm going to intervene and help make this happen for you. That's just
Nice.
my theory.
No,
I
cool.
mean, I don't know.
No, cool perspective on that because it makes sense to me.
All right.
And my play reflected that. But I wouldn't be the person. I wouldn't be the man. I wouldn't be the father. I wouldn't be the husband. And that for me is way more important than what could have been.
Amen. Well said.
You can tell that guy's feeling the spirit and feeling some emotion
Mm.
in their conversation.
Mm. Mm.
There's a lot that we can build on
Mhm.
with what you just said. Oh my goodness. I want to circle back to something that you said, which is, you hit rock bottom when that news leaked.
Mhm.
In your career, football wise, where were you during that time?
I was heading into, I was preparing for the combine.
Okay. So this is between Notre Dame and going to the NFL, getting ready for the combine.
Yeah, between from January, from January on, really January 2013 on.
It's interesting that you said that was rock bottom because in your career, you still had a lot going for you.
Mm-hmm.
It was inevitable you were going to go to the league. It was inevitable you were going to get drafted high, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for you, that wasn't that important. All of that didn't matter at this
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
right? Because you, as the person, had hit the
Mhm.
floor.
Mhm.
You were all the way down. And then you just described,
What are your thoughts, Mussy, on why that was rock bottom for him, rather than, because I think he has. I mean, he didn't have a good start to his career in the NFL, but why at that moment do you think I'm still going to be drafted? Still possibly in the first round. People were like,
Yeah.
"Hey, is he going to be
Yeah.
the first overall pick or the second?"
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, "Dude, this guy's going to be top 5
Yeah.
for sure." Maybe even the top pick. But why do you think he would say that was his rock bottom?
I think it was rock bottom because probably he was in a state of confusion,
Mhm.
right? Didn't know what to focus on dealing with I think he was just focused on dealing with what was the news coming out that, this person is back alive in the fake girlfriend catfish incident. He was probably thinking, okay, what are my families thinking? What, do I need to, he probably didn't really give him the full story of this whole thing. So he's probably thinking of that. He's probably thinking of the school. He has to deal with the school? I mean, probably he was just in a state of confusion and then in all angles of his life. And probably that was rock bottom because he didn't know how to go about it or what first to deal with, you know, to sort out first. And I feel like maybe that was, man, and I can see that being rock bottom because he just didn't know what to focus on first and solve. But yeah, he was just in a state of confusion, and I think that's rock bottom. And during that state of confusion, he just didn't know where to start, where to begin
Mhm.
to start solving the problem. But yeah, that's kind of my
No,
feedback.
I agree. And the way I would describe it from my perspective is, when you have an idea of what you think reality is, right? You think you know who you are. You think you know who your friends are.
Yeah,
You think you know what you're good at, right? And
yeah,
like everything shifts. And you don't know, like you're saying, you're just so disoriented. What's the one thing I can grab onto to hold on to? I grab my friends, they've abandoned me, right? I try to grab football, I can no longer make a tackle, right? I just, like, everything has been turned upside down. That, like you're saying, he's just like, I think his idea of what reality
mm,
was like nothing was what it seemed to he. And once that doubt creeps in so many areas, it creeps into
yeah,
everything. So that's probably why he was at rock bottom, because at that moment he did not know what he could rely on. Later on, things are still tough, but he may have identified, oh, I can rely on this. I can rely on two things.
yeah,
But in that moment when everything's falling apart, you're like, dude, it's probably, like there's nothing I can lean on.
yeah,
And so that's why it's rock bottom. Like you said, the confusion is just unbearable,
yeah,
unbearable.
yeah. And just thinking, man, he's just thinking, where do I start? And then I'm here
Exactly.
where do I'm here preparing for the combine, just finished a national championship, the biggest game in college football. Maybe probably college football, the national championship game after the Super Bowl is probably the next biggest thing,
Game.
you
Yep.
know. Yeah,
Yep.
viewership wise. But yeah, I can just can't imagine what he was thinking. Just state of confusion, just didn't know how to go about it.
Yep. His world's been turned upside down. Yeah, let's see what he says.
hey, Tyler, I'm better off as a man
Mhm.
because it leaked.
Mhm.
I would have been better off as a football player if it didn't, but I'm better off as a man today.
Yeah.
Mm,
So it's clear that from that time, your priorities were pretty straight. Like you weren't, it's like you were always prioritizing Manti over
Yeah.
sports
Mhm.
and the league. I think most people miss that.
Yeah.
I think most people have it backwards.
And I would slightly disagree with him.
mm,
He must have been doing something right with God, in my opinion.
To overcome,
to overcome. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you don't lose your mind and
Yeah.
become bitter is
Yeah.
he must have had some type of real substance in a relationship with God. Like that,
Yeah.
that to me personally, that's the only way. If it was 100% just the ego and
Yeah.
just about Manti,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been able to crawl out of that. I mean, granted, I had a little bit of a situation like that where I lost everything.
Yeah.
Literally had no money in the bank.
Mm.
The company I had started had just right when we thought we were going to just hit this tremendous success to literally fall flat on your face, to have nothing and have 2 kids with a third one coming on the way. And the people you thought you could trust were the exact people that put you in this situation, and
Mm.
you're just like confused. Like, if the only person I could rely on was me,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be here today, right?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't rely on me. I was like, dude, I put myself in this scenario, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, that's the only adjustment I would do to his comment was there had to be more of a relationship with God and him not just relying on him.
No, and I agree. To there had to be some spiritual relationship, even maybe if Manti maybe didn't recognize it, that he was
Yes.
something he was doing, either short, quick prayers, maybe he was doing before he starts his day or practice. Had to be something because nobody, nobody kind of goes through that to come out just as good as he's come out now, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think you brought up a great point that he must be doing something to have some kind of connection with God to kind of help him overcome this huge obstacle. It's like, man, because I think maybe this thing was probably the because granted, with all Manti growing up, maybe he had some challenges, with his family and stuff, little ones, but the challenge of questioning his ability to play football, questioning the integrity as a
Mm-hmm.
person, questioning he was falsifying this whole thing so he can be this, all of these things that were being questioned on him. Yeah, there's some spiritual intervention that has definitely been with Manti to overcome this, but
Yeah.
yeah,
And I would say, and I would dare to say, let's say if we give him the worst case scenario, which I don't think is the case, I definitely think he was doing something, but let's say he was doing nothing.
yeah,
Well, somebody was praying for the guy, whether it was his mom, his dad,
yeah,
whether it was his grandma that just passed away on the other side, because I believe our ancestors do a lot for us on the other side. Even if Manti was doing nothing, which I don't think was the case, somebody was praying to God. Somebody was reaching out to God and
mm,
say, can we please help him get through this? Because
good
there's
point,
no way that he just did it all on his own. That's just impossible.
good
From
point.
my perspective, and it seems like you're of the same thought as well.
Yeah.
Okay.